Hi, folks, and welcome to another team talk today. And it's a very important subject. And I know some of you are trying to gain as much information as possible on the forthcoming Employment Rights Bill. And at the front of that, because it's coming in next April, are the new umbrella regulations and legislative updates. I haven't got my own teeth in today. I've had to borrow some others, which is why I struggle with that one. I'm really pleased to invite Chris here today as the CEO of AG Payroll. Chris is a knowledge bank on this subject, and I'm really pleased to say at the Contractor Awards last week that AG Payroll were nominated for Umbrella of the Year. So, Chris, congratulations on you and your team. That is no easy win. And I know you've got something to show off there, and I know you're more modest than I would be. But come on, wave that prize because
Yeah,
you guys
we
have earned it.
we won the Umbrella Company of the Year last week at the Contractor Awards. I don't travel. I don't carry this everywhere, Simon. I just happen to have it to hand because you asked me to. Yeah.
Yeah, that well done. That is credibility in a very tough and highly competitive market. So, well done indeed for that. So we've we've got this is looming for us, isn't it, Chris? And I would think 50% of the questions and queries we get from our members now are looming with the ERB, and a split of that is, of course, umbrella new regulations, which are coming in earlier, a year earlier than the main ERB next April. So, for those not fully up to speed, what's really driving all this change in employment law right now? Why are the rules of recruitment changing so quickly?
Yeah, so great to be here, Simon, to start with. So, yeah, and if anyone on here has any questions or wants to reach out at the end of it, then more than happy to help everyone. We'll start with the Employment Rights Bill. There has been a rise of the gig economy and zero-hour contracts over the last few years. And I'm not political in any way or form. I think they're all as bad as each other. So I don't have any allegiances. But there's been some high-profile cases over the last few years. There was Uber in 2001. There was Deliveroo in 2003. And then there was the P&O ferries, one in 2022, where these workers were on zero-hour contracts. They weren't getting the rights, the employment rights, and Labour government, who like the unionised environments, they like to give workers rights as part of their tradition. They wanted to make changes, and this is where they've came to with these employment rights bills. So as of April next year, temporary and contractor workers will get employment rights, and it'll be staged over a couple of years. Yeah.
Yeah, and part of that drive has been the rise of the mini umbrella, unregulated, and in some instances and several instances in breach of HMRC rules where they'd just been avoiding the right tax, and some have skimmed money off holiday pay for the workers as well. So it's been at the abuse of the worker and of course paying the right level of tax as well.
It's the mini umbrella. I believe the umbrella legislation is the reason they brought that in is to take mini umbrellas out of the equation, because not only the workers have been getting punished, but also some agencies out there have been earning a lot of money off the back of it. Yeah. So it's good that these changes are coming in, and we'll start with a bit of a sledgehammer on this. One of the main changes that they said that is coming in is if anybody is using a mini umbrella company come April next year, they can enforce a custodial sentence. So agency owners and managers, not just directors and owners, managers within the company, they can get a jail sentence of up to 2 years in jail if they continue that. Yeah.
Whoa. And of course, one of the big changes, and I'm not jumping, is joint and several, because they wanted to make sure they're going to collect their money properly going forward, which is cool. The Employment Rights Bill is making waves. Can you break down what this bill is and why it matters so much for recruitment agencies? And don't go into the whole bill, because don't worry, I've got our friends at JMW talking about the ERB, not so much more the umbrella changes in a week or so's time. So it's the key elements of umbrella changes, I think, are quite key. But you can refer to key elements if you like, because people are here because they need education on it. So feel free.
Yeah, just touches slightly on the employment rights bill. The main rights they're going to bring in are day one rights, which will be day one statutory sick pay, flexible working as a default. So you can't just say someone can't work from home. You have to give a reason. No 0 hour contracts. If you're using 0 hour contracts, make sure you put that in the bin, because that's going to be a big no-no. There'll be a ban on fire and rehire practices, and the tribunal time limits will be extended from being able to claim after to do that after 3 months. It will be extended to 6 months, and all of this is going to be overseen by the new Fair Work Agency. So that's sort of on that side of it. The umbrella regs, as we touched on there, Simon, I simplify everything just to make it. You get a lot of people with jargon in this industry, but you can separate that by, there's going to be good guys and bad guys. There's going to be good payroll companies and bad payroll companies, the same as how there's good agencies and bad agencies. Yeah. There's going to be compliant payroll companies and non-compliant payroll companies. So agencies just have to make sure, if you're working with an umbrella company, it has to be a compliant payroll company, because the consequences are catastrophic. They're business ending consequences. So I think this is the biggest piece of legislation. I've been in the industry 21 years, and I think this is the biggest change to our industry, in the payroll and recruitment industry, in the last 20 odd years.
I would agree with you. And yeah, I referred to JMW before. Paul and Simon from there just said it's the biggest thing. You know, IR35, AWR, yeah, they were big changes, but this is the biggest by far. And it will affect how we work going forward. And it's good, because it will focus people to work with and build their supply chains with the most compliant and most respected and hopefully award-winning umbrella companies as well, because you can trust those. You can trust, if you're in joint and several, you want to pick your supply chain which is bulletproof. There's no doubt about that if you're a recruitment business owner and you need support. So moving forward, from your perspective, how would this legislation change the relationship between agencies, contractors, and end clients? And I should probably, I think that covers that.
No, I think the agencies have to be on the front foot with this. They can't sort of bury their head in the sand and say, it's not our fault, it's not our liability, it's the payroll company's liability, because this joint and several liability has been brought in for a reason. It's to make sure that the agencies are working with compliant payroll companies or umbrella companies. And if you're not, and that umbrella company goes bust, then you're going to be hit with a tax bill. So there has to be conversations. If there's not an umbrella company in the supply chain, and the agencies are paying the workers PAYE, then even though the legislation is called the umbrella legislation, this still affects agencies, because in the legislation, basically, the government want two parties to be responsible for the tax. So when there's an umbrella company and a recruitment agency, then the liability sits with the umbrella company and the recruitment agency. If there's no umbrella company and it's just the agency PAYE and the client, the liability then sits with the agency and also the client. So what we are finding now is that a lot of clients are starting to realise that this legislation is coming in, and they're having conversation with agencies because they don't want that liability. So we are now finding a lot of agencies are actually shifting their PAYE workers or their temp workers to umbrella companies, because again, it takes away that liability from the clients, and the liability will sit with the agency and also the compliant umbrella company. So we are starting to see a big shift that way.
Yeah. I'm not, as an ex-recruiter that ran contract and perm and temp myself, I'd want experts. We always wanted experts on payroll to look after our temporary workers, our contract workers. So I think it could, those that outsource to those the right partners and the right supply chain are going to can focus more time on doing what they do best, is supporting clients and candidates and making sure that those individuals are matched for the challenges those clients have. Just talking about, I said we weren't going to talk about the ERB, but and we might have covered this already. What are the key elements of the ERB that recruiters need to pay closest attention to? And I know you've covered a couple of things that you've said, the big headline stuff, but given that we've got next April and we've got another year for probably the ERB, just think about priorities there for a moment.
Yeah, I think especially on the employment rights bill, I've spoke to some employment lawyers on this, and it can be something as simple as the contracts you have with your clients, make sure it mentions the employment rights bill. So have your contracts reviewed and make sure there is a mention in there of the employment, an acknowledgement of the employment rights bill. You have to have a look at your processes and your procedures and basically bring the team up to speed. Any managers or consultants, bring them up to speed with what the changes are and that are coming in, because it's important to be in the front foot. The key thing on the umbrella legislation is the badge of honour, or the badges of honour, the main accreditations you have to look for in a payroll company. So the two main accreditations that an agency has to look for if they're using an umbrella company is the FCSA and SAFERIC. If the payroll company doesn't have them, then quite sort of simply run a mile. So basically, they're the two sort of badges of honour, I would say anyway. So just look for FCSA or SAFERIC.
I would reiterate exactly that. SAFERIC and FCSA are partners of team. We don't let any umbrella company into team who aren't at least with one of those, and many are attached to both. So that is absolutely sensible. They get audited every year, and they dig really deep, and there's constant checking up on their investment, their credit worthiness, and their processes. So that you look at your supply chain, folks, start having those conversations. You raised a really good point there that with now that I'm a network owner, not a recruitment owner, you need business owners need to understand what's going on. It's a great conversation. If you get your heads around the key facts, that's a great round table webinar to run with some of your clients. SME clients who perhaps won't have an internal lawyer, but maybe have some HR. They may not be up to speed with what the ERB is doing. So it's a good round table to have to educate them on 10 key issues that will affect those businesses. But you raised a really good point. You've got to train your staff. So that, if you've got internal staff, they won't be up to speed with it. They're probably not joining these types of webinars. It's business owners that do that. So make sure key points are really drilled into the staff, and a very smart move to get your T's and C's edited out so that they're up to speed with, and they mention the ERB.
Yeah, definitely.
So, thank you for that. How can recruiters make sure you've covered that, I was thinking, make sure they're working with the right umbrella partners, what they should be asking and checking for? We've mentioned the two brilliant auditing partners, FCSA and SAFERIC. Is there anything else that they should be asking or checking for, Chris?
To be honest, if they've got one of those two, the checks that SAFERIC and FCSA do are not just, they look at the financial security of the payroll company. They look at, so SAFERIC, for example, they integrate with my payroll software, but they also integrate with my government gateway. So that does real-time auditing on the pay slips to make sure that all the deductions are 100%. It also makes sure that I'm paying the taxes to HMRC every month. And then from an agency point of view, and this is there's two bits here that are the silver bullet, because an agency is going to have to evidence to HMRC if there's ever an investigation, what are you doing? Or even to a client, what are you doing to guarantee supply chain due diligence? What SafeRec do is they give every agency that works through a SafeRec accredited payroll company a monthly report. And that monthly report says that all the taxes have been paid by that payroll company, and that all the deductions have been made fully compliantly. So that's your silver bullet to say, right, there you go, that's what I'm doing, full transparency. But also just sort of hot off the press with SafeRec, and this is going to give them a real peace of mind. And it's something that agencies can use this to win business with clients. SafeRec are now going to give every payroll company, but also agency that's associated with the SafeRec payroll company, an insurance policy. So if any SafeRec payroll company goes bust and there's a £2-3 million tax liability, that'll be fully covered under the insurance policy, and also any legal fees will be fully covered as well. So there's absolutely no risk if you go through a SafeRec payroll company.
That's really cool. That is really cool. Julie Rose, one of our great members down in Kent, has asked a really good question. Actually, she's using her accountants to payroll her temps. They're mostly perm, but they do have some temps working. Would the responsibility be with us as an agency and our accountants rather than us and the client?
No, it'll be, if it's through their accountant, then it'll be her own PAYE reference that they're using. So the liability in that scenario will be with the agency and also the end client. The accountant is basically just using the software and knows the PAYE reference. So it'll be with the agency and the client in that scenario.
Yeah. Julie, if you want a one-to-one on that, I've got some ideas at how we could how that might give you an option, but we'll take that. We'll move on to the next question. Thank you. What are the key elements that need to pay the closest attention to? And also, it's like a secondary, because many agency owners are worried about they're worried about the level of compliance cost and admin burden, and we need to sort of work out that's reality. I met it was quite early on, and I bumped into one of our quite big temp members, and she said, what, this is going to drive small agencies out of even doing temp. And I don't think it is, but that's how nervous people are, and I want to try and avoid some of that idea, really.
I think there will be a bit of there will be a bit more admin, there will be potentially a bit more cost, but the likelihood of somebody claiming statutory sick pay from day one, it's not going to be a massive issue. The admin, I would say, do a bit of process work at the start, and once you put your processes in place, it just becomes part of the consultant's due diligence that they do. So I don't think it's going to be a huge impact on the admin and the cost. Yeah.
Good. Thank you for that. And this sort of leads me on to the next question. Are there any misconceptions you're seeing out there of what this bill will actually mean in practice? That there was that slight misconception with the agency worker that I bumped into. Actually, it was at the REC conference, who we were good mates with, and yeah, they're worried about it. You know, why would you bother doing it again? But that is a knee jerk, and it is causing some concern. Do you see any other misconceptions and concerns?
Yeah, I think there's been a bit of a misconception in the market. Some agencies think that it's possible to write into a contract with the umbrella company that the umbrella company is solely liable for the tax going forward. But it's legislation. It's going to be law. The law is there has to be two parties on the hook, so you can't write that into a contract that the agencies, the umbrella company is fully liable. So again, it goes back to that. Make sure you're using a compliant payroll company, because you are on the hook. So just make sure that you are able to evidence that you're working with a compliant payroll company if you are investigated.
Yeah, cool. The new regulations are getting a lot of attention. the umbrella regulations and contractor models. What's changing? What does it mean for agencies using umbrella models? Have we covered this?
Yeah, I think just again we're sort of repeating ourselves there, but
Yeah, we are actually.
there is a bit of sort of scaremongering in the market where people think they're going to take all their payroll in house and they're going to pay all their temps PAYE because of this joint liability. But you touched on it earlier on, Simon. Agencies are good at recruitment. We're good at payroll and compliance. So just make sure you pick your umbrella company. You do your due diligence on the umbrella company, and then there's absolutely no risk for the agency.
Right, I'm gonna drill into this a little bit deeper now, and I might be asking if you can help me with this. If I'm if I'm a recruiter and I haven't changed my umbrella supply chain for a while, but now this is driving me to do so. What's the key checks and balances I must do in my Q&A with an umbrella to make sure that they're the right for us? Now,
Yeah.
and it may not be just checking if they're FCSA or SafeRec approved, because the good news is there's a good raft of very solid businesses that fall under that. But underneath that, what other questions should I be asking about whether these guys are right?
Yeah, you can ask for their accounts,
Yep.
and then obviously you can look on Companies House and see how financially secure they are. So I think that's the key to this, is looking at the financial security of the umbrella companies that you're working with. We've actually been working for the last 6 months with some industry experts on a compliance questionnaire, an audit questionnaire to give out to the agencies. So
I didn't even know you were going to do that. That was like a setup, wasn't it?
So there's a 3-step process. There's a 20-minute questionnaire at the start, and that goes into loads of questions about how long have you been using your payroll company for, how much do they charge your temps, because usually that can be a sign of it. If they're charging the temps maybe £4 or £5 a week, it's like, how are they getting away with that? Where's the money coming from? That's a sign of maybe a mini umbrella company. Is there different company names on the pay slips? So it might be Joe Blogs Limited one week and then Jimmy Blogs Limited the next week. Again, signs of many umbrella companies. So this questionnaire goes into that detail. After that, we would get a 30-minute sort of consultation with myself or one of my colleagues who are experienced, to give them the ins and outs and the pros and the cons. And then at the end of that, they'll get a report which will tell them what they're doing well and what they need to change. So yeah, that's something that we can offer everyone out there. And, yeah.
Cool. Have you got that ready yet with your? Is that on the website, or is there a good place to find that, or is it just contact you?
No, if you contact me. So again, I was going to do this at the end, but basically we're going to charge 545 plus VAT for that come January. But anyone that's listening to this today, then we'll do that free of charge until the end of the year. Just because things are going to go a bit crazy in January, and we've got a bit of time now between now and December. Yeah.
Cool. Chris, that's fine. And your contact details are in the chat, so people will be able to pick up on that. I've got a LinkedIn user question, and Sean's come back with some good answers, but we'll try and cover those at the end if that's okay. Thank you, Sean, for your comments there. Could these changes lead to a shift in how agencies structure their contractor supply chains altogether, or how they look to employ their workers? And I use the words workers in inverted commas.
Yeah, I think especially with temps, there's a couple of different contracts. Some agencies engage them on a contract for services, and some engage them on a contract for employment.
Yeah.
If they engage them on the contract for services, then they won't be pulled into this legislation. The agency will be solely responsible for the tax liability. But if it is in the contract of employment, then it will be them and the end client. But again, the end clients might start to push back to the agencies and say that they don't want any risk in that. So that's where the umbrella companies are still so important in there. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's that's an education piece, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
For the end user, the client. That I think is key. So it's an important factor. Thank you for clarifying that.
There's also on that, Simon, sorry, we've had an example of that the last few days where some end clients actually pay their contractors through umbrella companies.
Yeah.
So they're now realising that if they're doing that, then they're on the hook. So they're having an agency who have basically won a piece of business where they've transferred the 50 contractors onto the agency, effectively just to do the payroll, but they've took a margin for it, and all they're doing is pass it on to the umbrella company. So if you've got that relationship with an end client and you want to mitigate the risk for them, and you've got a good relationship with a compliant umbrella company, then it's a way of winning some quick business.
And also making sure your client's got good credit terms or credit worthiness as well. I also mentioned I was thinking about it when you were talking about the people choosing their supply chain. If any of you smaller recruitment companies that are team members haven't got the ability to do credit checks, then contact us at HQ and we can run some credit checks on your potential supply chain umbrella. So we'll do that for you. So let us know. I don't want to be inundated with that, but hey, we're happy to help. We're happy to help. So let's see how that goes. Okay, with all these moving parts, navigation compliance in 2025 and beyond, the Employment's Right Bill, umbrella reform, ongoing IR35 implications. What's your advice for agencies trying to stay ahead of compliance without feeling overwhelmed?
I think the key to that is just work with good partners. Do your due diligence. Work with good partners. Work with experts. So if we're talking about the Employment Rights Bill, we're talking about the contracts. Then look at a legal and contract expert. Get that boxed off at the start. Make sure you've got that written into the contract. You've got your processes right. If you're doing your umbrella, still carrying on with umbrella payroll, make sure you partner with an expert that's fully compliant. So we keep touching on this, but just make sure you do your due diligence on your partners. These guys are experts at what they do. And then again, you guys can just crack on with the recruitment side of things. So I would just make sure you pick the right partners.
Yeah, and a little investment can save you a fortune later. So make sure you're legal and compliant from the word go. And now's the time to start looking at that, definitely. You know, not in March, just before April next year. Where do you see, I'm talking about risks again, the biggest risk for recruitment businesses right now, and what quick wins can they implement to mitigate them?
The biggest risk is this umbrella legislation. As I said, it's a potential business ending piece of legislation. And if there are some agencies out there, and I know there is because I've actually spoke to a few agencies who are still using mini umbrella companies, and they will use mini umbrella companies right up until April next year because they're going to milk it as long as they can. But if you are, then make sure you stop it as of April next year, because it's not just the fines and the tax bill, it's that criminal and custodial sentence you can get. There's a 2-year jail sentence that they potentially could get. They've built in they've connected this with the Criminal Finances Act, and they've actually put and that's the bit that will deter people from actually doing it, because before it was just a financial penalty, and it would be the company would go down and the company would be liquidated. They were willing to take that risk. People won't take the risk if you're going to go to jail for 2 years. That's just not a risk I don't think many people will be willing to take. Yeah.
And surely HMRC and the Fair Work Agency are going to be looking at what people have been doing for the last few years. You know, they chase us as for any non-compliance with our annual returns. I just don't believe that they're not going to look back at some of these processes and relationships and businesses that have been running potentially non-conforming for the last few months and years. They're going to look back, aren't they?
They're HMRC are opening a new centre in Newcastle where they're bringing on 5,000 new employees, and their job is to investigate payroll companies and agencies. So they're going to be on it. Whether they can go back, we don't know yet, but there is precedent for that. They have done it before, so
they will do it. If they can win, they'll do it. If they see a potential for win. How can agencies use compliance not just as a must-do, but as a competitive advantage? Because there will be people who, and I mentioned it before, I think the education piece is an opportunity. Yeah. If you understand what's happening and really sort of put together 5 key points or 10 key points of what an end client should watch out for, and run some round tables, which could be virtual or face-to-face. If you're a local generalist business, invite some of your people in. Have some, a little learning lunches on this, because that will bring people to you for guidance and support. And I think there's an opportunity. But do you see any other opportunity for competitive advantage?
Yeah, just touching on that as well. It's having those conversations with the legal directors, the operations directors of the companies, because agencies and payroll companies, we are being questioned by HMRC and different people like that, but these clients are being questioned by HMRC. The phrase that HMRC and these legal directors and operations directors are always looking for answers for is supply chain due diligence. So if you can evidence that you can guarantee the supply chain, you've done your supply chain due diligence and you can guarantee compliance in that, then that'll take you ahead of some of your competitors, because they're quite difficult conversations to have. But it's just more about, if you get yourself clued up, you get yourself knowledgeable, and you're comfortable that you're doing things right, then if you keep your clients compliant as well, compliance will win your business. It's not the most sexy subject in the world, but it will win your business, because again, these companies just want peace of mind.
And the FDs and the CFOs want this as well. So if you've got contacts, or if you haven't got contacts with those people, this is a way of developing a different relationship with an existing or potential client. So talk to the CFOs. They don't get pitched to very much by recruitment agency owners, but they'll listen. They'll listen on this subject. So moving on, some practical insights and takeaways. You've been helping agencies navigate some of these transitions for some time this year already. What separates the ones that handle regulatory change well? Because you see a broad spectrum of recruitment businesses now. Who's doing it well? What separates those guys from the ones that struggle?
So what we're finding now is that there's a definite sort of split with agencies, where you've got the big players in the market. You've got Hays, Reed, Adecco, etc., who have got massive resources, and they're already starting to look at it. And what I'm finding with the small to medium-sized businesses is they see this as a problem that they'll deal with in March next year or April next year, because they're so busy with the day-to-day running of their business, they don't have time to look at it. So there's definitely a split there between the larger businesses who are on this just now and they're starting to look at it, and the small to medium-sized businesses who are I'm not saying they're burying their head in the sand. It's a noise at the back of their head. They know it's there, but they're just too busy with everything else to deal with it just now. So I would just say start to put some time aside to definitely have a look at it, because it's going to be so important.
Yeah, thank you for that. If you've had to give recruiters one key action to take after this session, what would it be?
It's just going to have to be around the umbrella legislation. Make sure if you're using an umbrella company, they're FCSA or SafeRec accredited. If they're not, then you're sort of dicing. You're putting yourself in all sorts of trouble. That insurance policy that I've said by SafeRec is going to be a bit of a silver bullet. So just make sure you're working with one of those two
Cool.
accreditations. Yeah.
That's brilliant. Seb hasn't told me about that yet, but so I'll catch up with him and we'll do find the details and publish that to team members. So thank you for that.
I don't think he's launched it yet, so he'll probably give me a slap in the wrist for telling everybody.
Oh well, we've gone public now. Finally, what's one thing about the future of recruitment compliance that you think most people will still underestimate? That's a toughie, but if you can manage that one, Chris, I'll be pleased.
What are they underestimate? I think it goes back to that passing the buck, especially with the payroll and umbrella legislation. It's not my fault. It's not my liability. It's the payroll company. This joint and several liability, the agency is going to be on the hook. So they have to make sure that they get involved with us and start to have a look at it. Yeah.
That's good. Julie asked me a question again. Will team be updating the temp workers contract to include recommended wording for this new legislation? Yes, we will. But it's around the ER. It's mentioning the ERB. The ERB they haven't nailed it yet, and some of the changes won't come through to 2027. So we can't be that specific. I'm going to have it. I'm joining JMW with their ERB session. I think it's next week, or the latest is the week after. So I'll be talking to Paul and Simon at JMW with their guidance so that we make those edits in time and probably update them as they'll keep bringing in updates. There'll be changes. It won't be one big change. There'll be constant changes to that legislation past 2027 too.
It's funny you mentioned JMW there, Simon. We're going through our FCSA accreditation at the moment, and it's JMW that do the audit process.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, good. Well, they're our principal legal partners, and Paul and Simon, who are the lead guys there in the employment law space, they just focus on recruitment. 70%, 80% of their business is with recruitment businesses. So their understanding of the employment law for recruitment businesses and our clients are as good as you can get from anyone. Just to cover one point that a LinkedIn user said, my understanding was that the JNS liability is strict. So if the umbrella hasn't paid HMRC, the agency is on the hook regardless of any due diligence they've done previously. Yeah, absolutely, there will be. The agency could ask the directors of the umbrella to provide personal guarantees in case the JNS liability kicks in. I don't think they're going to be doing that. Not if it's people don't. I wouldn't advise anyone as a director of any company or a team member to give personal liabilities and guarantees when you're exposed potentially that much. But I like the idea of that insurance.
Yeah, the insurance is that's what in that question there. If the agency was on the hook, then this insurance policy would cover them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's sensible. And thank you, Sean Moran, for a little bit of guidance there as well. Due diligence is not a protection with regard to these changes. Exactly right. So thank you for that. A good comment. Well, thank you, everyone. This will be recorded. All of you that have attended today will get a copy of the recording if you want to watch again. Thank you very much for joining us. Chris, thank you for sharing your knowledge on this challenging subject in the recruitment space at this time. I mean, it is tough out there. We've got 700,000 live jobs at the moment. 32 months ago, we had 1.2 million. So the world for recruitment is pretty tough. We've got the budget coming next year, and all the noises. It's slightly doom and gloom for employment, employers, and which will obviously trip into recruiters as well. Candidates are behaving differently. With those less jobs, some of the candidates are finding it much more stickier to move. So if you lay on the ERB and the challenges and umbrella on top of the current market challenges, it's a pretty tough place to be. So, but it's the same for everyone. And if you're prepared, you're knowledgeable, and you use it for an advantage, and some of the ideas that we've bounced around today knowledge is power. So understand it, package it, speak to your clients about it, and do your due diligence. And congratulations again, Chris, for you and your team for winning Umbrella of the Year award. Yeah, there he is. Look, that wasn't really a prompt, but the one thing I'd say do is contact Chris and get that the information you're providing. I think you're charging for in January. You're going to provide free to people prior to Christmas. That's a great. Just remind us what that is and where they can get that from.
Yeah, if you reach out to me on LinkedIn, or my email address will be on here at the end, they'll get access to this audit, and that'll give them it'll put them in a good place going forward for January. Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining us today, everyone. Best wishes for, if I don't see any of you, have a good Christmas. I know it sounds a bit early. That's not a Christmas tree behind Chris either. I did quiz him on that, but I said it looks like a weed then, but that's very unkind. All the best. Thank you for now.